me make sure this works, because they say that it's easy to make it work, but I think we are live. I think yes, we are. So I'm here with Vernon Reid, and it's André Cholmondeley. It is I. I'm a little nervous today because it's Wednesday.
It's because Wednesday, you got the Wednesday heebie-jeebies.
Exactly. It's Wednesday, and I'm my own producer. So I want to welcome everyone to Make Weird Music channel, first of all, and to the second installment of my new show, The Gear Spotlight. And thank you for being here. And we're gonna hang out with wow. Do I have to introduce you? I mean,
I suppose.
no, I say that in jest. Of course, you always introduce your guests, and someone who I've been fortunate to see on stage and listen to his records since 1985 when I walked in to see James Blood Ulmer, and there was this opening act, Vernon Reid. I said, okay, let's go early. Pow, right to the jaw. And here I am. I haven't stopped. So we're going to talk to Vernon today about gear and about whatever else comes up. But
Right,
he's a
sure.
guitarist, a composer, a futurist. He is a photographer. We're going to talk a
Yes.
little about his
Thank you.
cycling gear because we get pictures every morning on.
Yeah, there was a there were a couple of months. I may do it again in May, but I was doing it December, last month of the year. I actually took a photograph of the sunrise every day, and the only we had a snow day, a severe snow day, and I took a picture of the snow. But I go to the same spot in Staten Island, Shaolin, in the North Shore in St. George, and I get this shot of the sunrise. And now I do it sporadically. I may do the dailies again in May.
Okay,
Take the whole month of May and try to do one every day. But I do them, like when I can get to the spot.
that's great. That's great. So, well, good place to start, and it fits right in because that's often how my day starts. I'm looking at some news. I'm reading some stuff early in the morning, and bing,
Mm,
you know, beautiful shots of the New York Harbor
New
and
York Harbor, yes.
Vernon's on a
Facing
bike.
towards BK.
Yeah. Let's start with that gear. What bike are you rocking right now?
Oh man, I'm riding a Trek 5000, and
Oh,
it's an oldie, and it's so funny because my luck with bicycles in New York has been horrendous. I've actually had 5 bicycles stolen, and interestingly enough, this was in the 90s, and I had a bond. The last one really was I had a beautiful Bontrager
okay.
that that got stolen off my the last one. The other ones were Treks, and Cannondales, and they I mean, the way they were stolen was like, I mean, it's remarkable. They were stolen. One was stolen off my apartment landing when I was living in Chelsea. One was stolen in front of my manager's office, and it was, one was stolen in front of my health club. I used to go to Eclipse, and I locked it like a dummy, so it was on me. But then I've properly locked them, and then they would. I mean, the bike thieves. I have a very low opinion of, and I am a pretty progressive person, but I become pretty retrograde when it comes to bike thievery. But anyway, yeah, it's a great bike. It's gotten me around all over the city, and it's gonna be. We're almost to the anniversary of the initial lockdown. I think
Correct.
like March the 15th. No, actually March 11th or 12th.
Well,
Because
yeah. Sorry. Go ahead.
I played a show um on at Iridium on March the 10th.
Hmm.
And that was the last live thing I did. And
And yeah, on a stage without worrying about who coughed over there. You know.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. No, I'm using the word a year a lot lately, so that's But to just close the circle on that, well, we can come back to it. But folks, if you want to follow some of these great daily pictures, Vernon's Twitter feed is just entertaining, a delight, historical, musical, funny, Marvel and movies.
It's
So
all
it's
movies a lot. Yeah.
Vernt22. I put it in the chat. That's VURNT 22 at
Yeah.
Vernt22, and that's his Instagram also. So, um, well, I know we got some people, a lot of people jumping in on the on live on our YouTube. So put your questions there. Um, well, let's jump into some gear, man, and let's go right back to ground zero. What was your tell us about getting that
Well,
first?
it's so funny, man. You're talking about like from the very beginning.
Yeah,
I mean, there's so many things, but I could say my first guitar I ever got was a donation from a distant cousin. Was a Dixie Hummingbird, a
right.
Gibson. So, which is a pretty nice guitar, but it
Yeah,
was in pretty bad condition,
got
and I struggled with it for a while. And then I I was motivated to get electric guitar, of course, and the first guitar I got with my own money was a Univox Mossrite copy,
mm,
which I really wish I still had it. I really wish I still had it. And in fact, I did a nostalgia purchase recently where I found a Univox Les Paul copy,
oh,
and it has the same pickups. It has these kind of clear, they're kind of faux humbuckers, but they have like they're clear and they have yellow coils. They're very distinctive looking. And what I recall was that my Univox had a great, just a nice tone, almost like a silver, almost like silver tone.
okay,
Pickups have this beautiful, sound. They're very low output, but they really sound nice. And so I was on Reverb, which is probably the worst place to hang out if you want to keep money. I'm getting. I have a local to me luthier repairman, Jason Ferguson, and he's been handling all my guitars. And it's a springtime, so a bunch of these things have got to get tweaked and stuff.
okay,
And yeah, so there's that, and there are a bunch of guitars, Ari and Aria Pro 2. I mean, one of the things, the great life lessons I got was getting my a dream guitar, which turned out to be like the worst guitar I ever personally owned, was a BC Rich.
oh,
And maybe it was, and I'm not gonna besmirch the BC Rich brand.
right,
They're world famous and they've been
right,
doing their thing for a long time. And they were kind of one of the first kind of outside of, I mean, for me anyway, outside of the Gibson Fender Axis. And the Dan Armstrong was around, and of course there were guilds and other guitars. But at that point in the 70s, I'm dating myself for real. Um, like the BC Riches came out and they were kind of the super fancy thing,
right.
And I got a BC Rich Eagle, and I literally just was dreaming of getting this thing. And somehow by hook or by crook, it was like $700, which was like a mountain of money. And managed to uh, I managed to earn the money and save it, and I got this guitar and it had all the switches on it and all this groovy stuff. And then it was just funny. I had it. It was my dream guitar and I loved it and I played it. And then it just gradually over time, it occurred to me, I actually don't like the way this guitar sounds. And it's kind of a crazy thing because you don't go there immediately when it's your dream thing. You kind of convince yourself that it's working, it's working, it's working.
Right.
And it's a metaphor for many kinds of relationships.
Sure, sure.
And you tell yourself it's cool, and then you just dawns on you that this is, it's not doing anything I want. And that was funny because a lot of times with gear and stuff, there's a whole advertising industry that plays on our insecurities, our desires, our
Sure.
fears, and people are really good at getting in our heads and telling us stuff.
Brilliant.
And now it's been, um I don't know, it's exponentially more. There's a lot more going on because now people are going to YouTube, they're going to the chat rooms, they're going
Oh,
to Reddit
Mhm.
and or Twitter and and the forums, and people are, the way people are, put the knife in their teeth and off they go, ready to defend their pet brand or their pet thing. And interestingly enough, I have a friend that recently, because there's been this whole thing around the Klon
Oh
overdrive,
yeah, and then the different clones of that. Then I like the yes, uh,
and I
thousands. It's
somebody I know has an original clone that they let go of,
oh,
and they got paid. It
oh,
was
yes, it's
it's
crazy.
like, no, like, no names to mention, but it was just kind of stunning. And just talking to friends about it, like, what's the worth of an overdrive? Like at what point does it lead? And in fact, because it's become an object of desire, it almost becomes irrelevant what it sounds like.
Yeah, yeah. It transcends. It gets into magical
it,
thought. Yeah,
it gets into magical thinking, and a lot of times with gear, and I've been guilty of it myself.
yeah,
Sure, I've
yeah.
owned a lot of stuff. I went from not owning anything, not having an amp, not having a case, and I went from that to, literally traveling with a small town behind me,
Sure.
and all of those sorts of things.
Well, I love a couple quotes that you've said along the way. One of them is how guitarists can get into this little druidic sort of thing where they're just imagining it has to be this, it has to be that, and you've always pointed out, no, go on your search and find out what works. So it's great that that's still.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, people will. I mean, it's easy to think. It's funny to think about. People, obviously, there's a thing. A guitar is too expensive to buy,
Yeah.
right? I had the kind of crazy story where I'd been on a buying jag, and I was at Mazzati Music. It was a legendary little music store in Brooklyn. It's gone now. It's really a drag, but this is a great, great little shop, and they had a Martin, and the Martin, was one of the D series Martins, and it was going for $1,200. And this guitar was one of the loudest, nicest. And I've played around. I've never really owned a Martin, but I played them, in stores, whatever. And this guitar was easily the nicest, and it wasn't the most rarest. And but I remember thinking, this guitar is nice, and I went into a bag or said, well, I've been a little out of control. So then, I went home, and I literally the next day said, holy shit, I've got to go back and get this guitar, because it just, you know, it had haunted me, right? It just did that thing that occasionally will happen. And I walked into the store, and I was told, a guy walked in right after you left, picked up the guitar, strummed a single chord, and bought it on the spot. And
Just
and I knew, and and it's so funny because I convinced myself, obviously, and of course I was right. I was being fiscally responsible,
yeah,
and I tell that story
yeah.
since, and that story's 15 years old or something. And really, I mean, and in fact, the repair woman came out the back, and she said, don't feel bad. I thought about using my employee discount and buying that guitar myself.
That makes it worse.
Yeah, that makes it even worse, because she
Then
was
you
like,
think, oh, right,
I almost didn't put it out on the floor, and I just,
yeah.
so in the opposite end of the spectrum, um, there's a shop in Seattle called the Trading Musician in Seattle. This great guitar shop
Mhm.
in Seattle, and anytime I get there, I go. I try to go. It's like going to old town music in Portland. It's like,
Yeah,
it's a destination. So if I'm on tour, I get over there,
yeah.
and they had a bunch of these kit guitars, these Korean kit guitars, And the thing that they did is that they assembled, you could buy the guitar as a kit, but they also assembled some of these guitars. And they did this thing. They have this locally sourced, they have like an oil finish to them. They put them together, they put together the best kits. And they do this kind of oil finish, and they say they use like a locally manufactured clear shoe polish, and they rub these guitars down with this local
Right.
Seattle shoe polish. And I mean, I have to say, it's one of the nicest Telecasters
Wow.
I've ever played. But the funny thing about it, and this is the exact opposite in the spectrum, the guitar was like only $200.
Well, see, yeah. No,
And I went and said, well, this guitar couldn't be as good as I think it is. It was so cheap that I just went, well, I just get, and and that's another one, right? It's the other end of the opposite end of the spectrum from
yeah,
the Martin.
yeah. No,
So on one hand, I said, oh, I'm spending too much money, but this guitar is phenomenal. This guitar was like supreme, right? I let it go. Then this other guitar is like, man, this is, but actually, this guitar was put together. They basically curated the guitars that
yeah,
they put together these, and they kind of assembled the best ones. So actually, it was like the best example, and they really put it together well. And I'm telling you, as far as Telecasters I played, it was amongst the nicest. I mean, of vintage, whatever,
yeah.
And maybe I'm bugging, and that's why I didn't buy it, because I was thinking I'm bugging.
Yeah,
Like I'm like, it's not this, but it was really that good of a guitar. So
yeah.
it's weird how things like that will affect.
Sure. Yeah. And a bunch of lessons in there. I always tell students or people who ask, like, what, they talk about these expensive guitars, and I say, yeah, check out whatever, but always remember that Brian May changed the world with a $50 guitar, right? And Eddie Van Halen, right? Those things.
Right.
The money isn't. I want to jump around the temporal map here
Yeah,
because
sure.
you know everything's happening all at once. But let's jump. I want to jump to really the first major tour you did. Correct me if I'm wrong, but it was the tour with Ronald Shannon Jackson, right? Was
Yeah,
that?
sure. Touring with Ronald Shannon Jackson back in the days. That's
Yeah.
like,
And
wow.
what I love, I love the videos. Thank you for whoever documented that stuff. And folks, if you haven't seen that, Ronald Shannon Jackson, wow, rest in peace. But one
Yeah.
of the most
Yeah.
amazing, musicians. And there's a 1983 concert that's on the YouTube. But I'm fascinated that you watched this. This is Vernon's first tour, and he's got. Correct me if I'm wrong. I saw a steel guitar, a six-string banjo,
Yeah.
a Les
Echo. Yeah.
Paul, a Strat, and the Roland G202 guitar sit. And that's your
Yeah.
first tour, and it's
Yeah.
flying.
I had the whole bit. Well, it was the
About that.
first kind of, it was one of the early tours, but it was the first one where I had like pedals, I had the guitar
Sure.
synth thing. And that was like a very, and interestingly enough, that Strat, again, that was a put together Frankenstrat.
Yeah.
It was a Frankenstrat. And if you see that video,
Hmm.
I'm playing that guitar, and that guitar is blank.
Yeah.
And here's the craziness: like after that concert, the official artist for the Montreux Jazz Festival in 1983 was Keith Haring.
Oh wow. Yes. So.
And Keith Haring, he was famous in New York for the Glowing Baby. And like he kind of came up around the same time as Jean-Michel Basquiat.
Hmm.
And it was they were controversial because they were not graffiti artists, but they were in the graffiti art space in a way.
Hmm.
Even though Samo, Basquiat used to write his name as Samo, for Samo. Samo, for those who dare, and he kind of did variations on that. And the Glowing Baby became this enigmatic thing that Keith Haring did, and they both kind of blew up in the art world at that time. So Keith Haring had become the official artist of the Montreux Jazz Festival of 1983, and he had poster or whatever. And I was a huge fan, and I happened to run into him, and I said, "Man, I'm a huge fan." He said, "Man, you're doing it." He came to the concert, and he really dug the Decoding Society. We stayed for the whole thing, and I said, "Would you do a drawing on my guitar?" Because he had been running around. He'd had a I think he had like had a whole Range Rover that he did, you know. And I came to his hotel room and he did this drawings illustration, and he signed it, you
Yeah,
know.
I
And I
remember that.
still have that. So
Yeah.
you know the thing. And I played that guitar. I played that guitar, and I kind of rubbed off part of it because I actually. And at some point, I said, like, you know, maybe you shouldn't do that.
Yeah, yeah, right.
You know what I mean? So you know, I have to get it appraised at some point. Check. You know, I don't know.
Yeah.
It's a thing.
I remember seeing you with that guitar back then. So I know, of course, it was easier to. I heard of people putting amps right on planes and stuff, but going to Europe with
Oh
five
no. Well,
guitars,
you didn't.
well,
They
how did you?
didn't. All you had to have. I mean, going to Europe back then, all you had to have was a ticket. In fact, they couldn't ask you.
Wow.
They couldn't ask you for ID because it was considered an invasion of privacy. So it just completely. But then the '80s were the golden age. Was it the '70s or the '70s? The '70s were the golden age of skyjacking. Like people like taking the plane to. That was like the set, like the mid to late '70s,
Yeah, yeah,
and then they had to
true.
change the whole
Yeah.
security thing.
Have
But
a
yeah.
cigarette, put it out, and then go hijack the
Oh,
plane.
dude, people smoked on planes. It was
Yeah, yeah.
completely crazy. We had a smoking and a non-smoking section in the plane, and it
I
was
know. It was
hilarious.
no. Well, that's well, okay. Well, folks that have toured appreciate that. This man had all those guitars, and you just put them on the plane. Okay, so that
Yeah.
was tell us a little bit more about the gear happening just those next couple of years.
Well, there
Because
was so, but, you know, because it was the beginnings of a kind of boutique peddling and whatnot. It was kind of before it was like you had a few choices: MXR, Electro Harmonix. It's amazing Electro Harmonix has stayed in the
mm,
game. You
yeah,
know, like, I mean, the whole run,
sure.
and kind of revitalize itself. Because you know back then it was like get a big muff, and I remember when the Proco Rat, when the first
Mm,
Proco Rats came out. I mean, that was people were because Proco was a cable company.
right.
It was so weird. It was such a weird product jump. It was like jumping the shark because, you know, Proco made guitar cables
Right. Right.
and mic cables, and that's what we knew it for. So when the first Proco Rats came out, they were a sensation on 48th Street, and of course, talking about that, I mean, you have to talk about the Music District in New
Yeah.
York City, which was 48th Street between 7th and 6th Avenue.
So you were
Um,
there, just
and yeah, I was there. I was
lurking.
there every day. In fact, recently, the patriarch of Manny's at that time, Henry, you know, who was a legendary, you know, business owner and
Sure.
really inspirational person. You know, he's passed on,
I saw
and
that. Yeah.
yeah, and it was very affecting to me because I think about him the way I thought about Hilly Crystal, you know,
Other.
from CBGBs. You know,
Mhm.
he saw me. I mean, I was hanging around that block, you know, when I was 17 years old, and he saw the whole arc of my
Oh,
career going from, you know,
sure.
just being an annoying kid on the block to you know, starting to travel, you know, Shannon, you know what I mean? And
Sure.
he always had this kind of twinkle in his eye because he was like you again, you know, and
Right.
then
You punk kid.
you know what I mean? Are you gonna buy something? Oh my God, here he comes again, you know, trying things out, you know. But he developed a tolerance for me, and then things started to happen, and he was just really happy, and then he started telling me the stories about opening the store for Jimi Hendrix after hours,
Oh
you
man.
know, opening the store for
You,
him for him and other artists of that era because you know they were it was the beginning of the whole, you know, artist as celebrity,
sure.
rock musician as celebrity, particularly on that block because it was musicians particularly would go, you know.
Right.
And that whole the walls in Manny's were yeah,
Mm,
like everybody in rock and jazz, everyone, the Who,
never.
Buddy Rich,
Right.
George Benson. And I think it was one of the proudest days of my life when he, you know, he asked for a picture for Living Color. That was a big deal. big deal.
That's huge. I wonder where those pictures went because yeah, that was a
I know. I would imagine that the family has them.
yeah, yeah.
I would imagine.
This is very unprofessional, but I'm not a professional, so I'm gonna just reach over here because
Uh-oh.
it's sitting right in my studio, and let's jump up this.
Oh yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
uh, I wanted to. I said, let me grab it because a lot of you young kids, you don't. This is out of print. It's hard to find, and this is a record that just I can't. 1985. This comes out, so this is a few years later. And what's still incredible is the range of tones and gear that's on here. So talk a little bit about that because Roland. Uh, 300 synth, there's banjos, there's dobros, there's Washburn acoustics, there's every string. Talk a little bit about doing this
Yeah.
with.
Well, that was really. I had to give credit to the producer David Breskin,
Mm,
and he had been really, very instrumental and involved with Decoding Society, and and he said, "Man, there's this guitar player I really like. And we were friends, and he said, this guy coming up, man, Bill Frisell. He's really, really cool. And then when we met, we just clicked. Just a nice, soft-spoken guy, and he just played great. I mean, he played great. He was very much himself. I mean, it's kind of like, you know, it was kind of like there was jazz fusion, and there was, obviously rock and all the other various styles, and it had almost kind of come down to, on the one hand, there's McLaughlin and Holdsworth, and that kind of fiery Tommy Bolin, kind of fiery rock style. And the other side, there was the emergence of Pat Metheny, Pat Metheny, and John Abercrombie,
hmm hmm
um, and you know Bill Frisell kind of emerged in this kind of post that period, and just had a really kind of just a great sense of not just swing though, but he was kind of a weirdo, he was kind of experimenting,
Yeah,
and this is around the time that the 16-second delay,
right.
and he was a supreme, manipulator with the slides, and that's the thing I loved about Electro Harmonix is that they made kind of boilerplate everyday pedals, but Mike Matthews would always come out with these weird experimental, like, bonkers pedals that were like, how do you even use this? Like a frequency analyzer? Like, how do you even?
Yeah,
It's a
uh,
bananas. And and the 16-second digital delay, which was also a kind of quasi looper.
super, right.
It was a very interesting piece, and Bill used it incredibly well. And I think he switched from that to a kind of lexicon stuff
Lexicon, right, right.
later on.
Yeah. Well, so you got? Did you? How? You just dragged everything into the studio on day one.
Kind of,
Yeah.
pretty much, and that was a fun record. That was produced by David Breskin, engineered by
Right.
Ron St. Germain, and,
Right.
and and Ron,
Bad brain.
has we've done work over
Sure.
many years, and in fact, he yesterday was the 28th anniversary of the third Living Color record. Time, oh no, Stain,
Yes.
right, and
Okay.
and Ron produced that record.
Yeah. No. Well, folks, yeah, look for this one. It's hard to find, but it is.
Smash and
It's
Scatteration,
still.
yeah.
It just sounds great. It's still some very
Yeah, it's very, yeah, it's
kind of good stuff.
pretty, it's a
And
pretty interesting, dark, weirdo, funny things that we got into on that record.
it's
Yep.
true. And then a few years later, you only did the one gig ever, right? At BAM. Was there more
Yeah,
than
we did. We did one. Yeah, that was curated by Don Byron.
I hope someone pressed record on that. That was great. I would have crawled through glass to get there, and I did. So hopefully you guys released that because that was But you know how it goes. Stuff is sitting in a
Right.
vault. The next few years is very interesting because you had the Vernon Reid trio, which I referred to at the top.
Right, right. That was the evolved
Yeah,
into, yeah, that was with myself, Alex Mosley, and Greg Carter. Uh,
right.
yeah,
And,
we
and
started it together.
and that was an incredible couple of years because I would come see you, and what was cool is every time I'd come peer on the stage, it was a bunch of different stuff. So tell us a little bit about that
Yeah,
exploratory.
I'm trying to remember. Like, I know I had a bunch of, some of the holdover pedals from Decoding Society. Um, I was experimenting with like electric mistresses, and I think by that time I'd gone from, because I had a blue box, I had an MXR Distortion Plus, and then I eventually, the Rat was a little later, and um, there were so many different distortions. I had a graphic fuzz at one time. I had a bunch of different
Right,
things.
all kinds of.
I had
Yeah,
a Fender Twin that I blew up on, that just kept blowing up on me, and the legendary Harry Colby, sent his daughter through college from the many times I had that amp repaired.
really.
Yeah, yeah, just kept blowing transformers or whatever. But
Right, right.
yeah, it
That's
was that was a fun thing. That was a fun thing. I actually had one of my favorite amps. Was I got a Dean Markley uh, DR 150, and
around
I
then.
actually have found one. They're very hard to find, and they're not considered boutique, but they're really great. They're really really great. I think
Yeah,
they're great. Yeah,
that's yeah. The
have
amp
a
changed.
phenomenal drive channel. A very unique drive channel.
Yeah, I remember you had Marshall, VHT Boogie. Um, Tell us a little bit about when you went into that MIDI world, because then all of a sudden there was a mitigator and the MP1.
Oh yeah, that was kind of like after, because it was kind of a hodgepodge of things going into recording Vivid,
Right.
and in after Vivid, that's when I started experimenting with MIDI controlled tube amps. Like I used the MP1
Yeah.
preamp, and I used it with the VHT power amps. That
Right.
was a thing that I started to do, and started experimenting with the switching systems and rack effects, and that evolved. I mean, through time. I mean, certainly by the time we were touring with the Stones, I'd had a whole full on
Raids. Yeah. Yeah.
system. But at that point, and I've been experimenting with hot switches, and I used a MIDI mitigator,
Right.
which was Lake Butler Sound, and they're a small company out of Florida, and I love that thing. I mean, they've all kind of you know decomposed and blown up by now,
Okay. Yeah.
but yeah, I stayed with that because I was able to arrange songs in sets,
Right.
you
That
know,
nothing like that thing.
and there was nothing like it, and you could have streams, different data streams,
Yeah.
and you could send out MIDI notes and
Right.
chords, and you could do all of this stuff, um, and and I use it controlled. This is like pre-computers and pre,
Mhm.
all of that, right? So, I remember one time we were in Europe, and I had a single mitigator, and eventually I'd have three of them as backups. You know what I mean?
Okay. Right. Because
But I
they're.
remember one time the mitigator kind of, and there was no way, because we were in Europe, so
Right.
there
So
was
we're gonna get
no DHL. There
that.
was no way to get
Yeah.
one from Florida. I mean, and they didn't carry them in Europe. This is like an American domestic company. So what had happened was, it lost its short term memory. So I wound up every day,
Oh,
right?
no. No.
So
No. No.
as soon as it powered down, it lost everything. It kept its functionality, but it wouldn't remember anything. So
Right.
every day I had to program all the program changes. I had to program the names of the tunes. I had to program the entire show. I had to get the sound check, and it took me uh, about an hour. I got it down to about 45 minutes,
Sure.
but literally, I had to program all the tunes, all the
Yeah.
moves, all the program changes, and and we do it in time for sound check. And the whole thing was, whatever's happening, like, this cannot be powered
Power
down.
down. And
This
what?
is no, and of course, um, of course, there's the one day when somebody, the roadman runs in with his eyes are like plates, and I'm like, what happened? Is he, dude, and I had to, and that's how I got it down to 45 minutes,
Right,
because I literally had to take it to, because something happened, and the opening band, like,
right.
it
That's
got it got it got powered down,
right.
and it was what a nightmare. And I literally got the last program change in, had to run to the back to the room, change clothes, and like people were like literally coming into the play. And, I finished it. They wouldn't hold doors, and I managed to, and that happened for like almost like 3 weeks out of a month long tour.
And what tour was that again?
This was a because we had several tours of Viv. This was one of the Vivid
Oh, one of the
European
Ventures.
tours.
Okay,
Yeah.
great. Yeah, yeah. Um, and again, for you gear nerds, go look that up. Butler MIDI mitigator. And what's fascinating, Vernon, is it's got some Yuri Gagarin shit, man. You were out in space. No one had that thing. No
Yeah.
one. I mean,
Yeah.
and I think what's really great, and this story adds to it, is what a training ground. Because then when all the other stuff started coming in, you were right there to program it. It was like,
Yeah.
okay,
Well, programming was like,
you,
at that point, programming was like a thing, because also, we're working with samplers, and
right,
there was also, so it was controlling my gear, but there was also triggering the speeches, triggering the hits,
sure,
because it was divided between myself and Will.
well,
And
yeah,
Will was using drum cat pads,
sure,
you
early.
know,
Early.
and early on, and that whole thing of programming and making sure, getting the velocities right, and
Yeah.
and not hitting the wrong pad, and that and that was, you know often a funny, like, you'd hear crazy horn things from one other another tune showing up, and so we were kind of like live remixing all the time.
Yeah. Now, let's talk about some of the times you play as a sideman, which is so voluminous. The first Public Enemy album. Tell me a little bit about that
Yeah, that
stage
was
and what you used there.
yeah, I was one of the kind of primary movers and shakers in the Public Enemy camp. Was a young man named Bill Stephanie, and
Okay.
Bill Stephanie reached out to me, and at this point, like, Run DMC had been out there, LL Cool J had come into the mix and had blown everything up, and I was fully into the hip hop conversation. A lot of people, like the funk people, the thing about it, when Rappers Delight came out, it was dismissed as novelty. It was dismissed totally as a novelty thing. And it was, strangely enough, I had a different insight into that, because Good Times was based on the song by Chic, Good Times. And the crazy thing about it is, one of my best friends from high school was in the band Chic. Um,
Okay.
Raymond Jones, the late great Raymond Jones, who, rest in power to my man. But he's playing the Fender Rhodes part of Good Times. So I actually got a chance to hang out. You know what I mean? At one time, things were going so bad, I wanted to become Nile Rodgers' guitar roadie, and Raymond talked me out of it. He just kind of said, "You don't want to work for that guy. You don't want to work for him." Because
Okay.
I was like, "Yo, man, can I get a shot?" And he was like, "Nah, man, I can't let you do it." which
Wow.
is
Okay.
really,
So,
you know.
so
And
yeah.
so anyway, I remember that Good Times had blown up and was all over, WBLS radio. Frankie Crocker was playing the song a lot. Had broken the song on the radio. It was a sensation, and it was such a sensation that Rappers Delight came out, and I was he they did a show at the Beacon Theater, and one of the greatest moments, one of my greatest concert witnessing moments was when they were playing Good Times and they did a breakdown. And then Nile Rodgers started to do the Rapper's Delight rhyme
Bring
on
it.
top of it. And the audience went berserk.
Hmm. Hmm.
They went
Sure.
berserk. And that's at that moment, I realized that hip hop is gonna stay. Like this music is not going away. And there's something going on with what this is.
Yeah.
So in the course of things, obviously, that had happened, and then Sucker MCs came out,
Sure.
and It's the Joint, and UTFO, Roxanne, all these things that had come
Hmm.
out, and basically this was the reign of the b-boy joints, and uh, and I just had gotten to know a bunch of different people in the scene, and Bill Stephanie knew about me from not just Decoding Society, but Defunct, because I was also, one of the alternate guitar players in Defunct, because like basically my one of my dearest friends, Melvin Gibbs, who did Melvin, was also in Decoding Society.
Okay. Yeah.
Because Decoding Society had two bass players, had Melvin and Reverend Bruce Johnson, not to be confused with Bruce Johnson, my guitar teacher, which is a whole other story for another time. A different dude, man. Rest in power to him too. Anyway, uh, so Melvin had started playing with Joe Bowie and this project Defunct, and I was hanging out. This was when downtown Manhattan, this is when it was all jumping. The clubs, I mean, it was a whole ecology of clubs, and it was insane. Everything from the Peppermint Lounge to Privates to the Cat Club to Trams to Irving Plaza to CBGB's to the Mud Club. It was to Danceteria to the Limelight. I mean, it was just like all of these spots to
Great.
hit it.
That's
It
so.
was it was
Bottom
crazy.
line. Yeah.
The bottom line, yeah, exactly. Not even to to mention Trudy Hellers and the West Side clubs,
Exactly. Yeah.
um, the Bitter End and all of that stuff, Kane's Castaway. So it was a bunch. There was just a lot going on, and there was a spot on 23rd Street called the Squat Theater, and that was where Defunct, and James Chance and and the Contortions, they used to play there. So I got to hang out with Melvin, and it was packed. It was this crazy scene, and that's how I met Kelvin Bell
Okay.
and Martin Orbert. I'd known him from Brooklyn. He was the other guitar player, and I met like all these incredible players, like insane, insanely great Marvin Horn, great jazz guitarist, Bill Bickford, great jazz guitarist. Ronnie Drayton. He and I had become friends, and Ronnie Drayton was one of the alternate guitar players in Defunct, and it was a crazy scene because basically, they Joe Boy had a set which was for a long time was the same kind of 9 tunes from the first Defunct record, and basically everybody had to know,
Right.
Strangling Me with Your Love. We had to know these tunes, and if you knew them, so at a certain point, it would there was just like a bunch of us that could alternate. You know what I mean? So it would be wild. So anyways,
That's
Bill Stephanie knew me from that band and from Decoding Society, and he said, "Hey, there's this new group, and I really want you to play on this song, right?" And I played on I had met Doug Wimbish. I played on Duke Booty's one of Duke Booty's records. I played on a song called Same Day Service. So you know all of that to say, that's how I met Flavor Flav and Chuck.
right. Right. And first
Yeah,
album.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Um, one more session that's very interesting because it's so different. I think beautiful album you played on the Jerry Allen album, The Gathering, and
yeah.
wow, what a lineup! Besides yourself, Mino, Sinelu, and Lenny White's on there. Wallace
Anyway,
Brown,
yeah,
rest in
yeah.
power, and Jerry, rest in power.
Oh, I know, man. It's such a Jerry Allen is she was a really good friend to me, and it was special that we got a chance to to play together on that record. She is such an incredible force on the piano. I mean, to me, the greatest, most original, you know, pianist of that generation of players. I mean, for me, and I'm biased, of course, but she was one of the few pianists. Like Ornette Coleman didn't work with pianists. I mean, like not for the most part. I mean, he might have worked with Rand Blake and not many other people. He was really kind of using guitars a lot. And I remember when Jerry was touring with Ornette, and it was so beautiful. I saw them play together in Paris, and it was one of the most beautiful concerts I'd ever seen. And she fit right into the harmonic kind of
Yeah.
concept, and like they would play these tunes, and she wouldn't she would kind of he would play his heads and whatnot, and she would like she wasn't comping, like
Right.
she wouldn't comp because that was like not a thing. But then she would like maybe double lines, and then she would improvise, and it was so intense because it was just because Jerry Allen. She also played with Mary Wilson, you know, rest in peace, and I remember when she was auditioning for Mary Wilson, and here's an artist, who had really come up the hard way in Detroit jazz clubs and made her way in DC. And she was so nervous, because Mary Wilson, she was very much a Michigan woman,
Yeah.
So Motown, and Motown shows up quite a bit in her work. She's always had an affinity and a love for Motown. So for her to work with a actual bona fide Motown legend,
My legend. Yeah.
and when she aced that audition and got that gig, she couldn't have been happier.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, she was as happy playing with Mary Wilson as she was playing with her mentor Marcus Belgrave, the great trumpeter Marcus Belgrave. I mean, she loved that music, and that was the thing. So she was such a great friend to me, and she was also part of the early days of the Black Rock Coalition, and she helped me out at one point. I've been faced a lot of disappointments, you know what I mean, and rejection, and demos getting rejected. And I remember one time I got into that late 20s headspace of you're never more dramatic than you are in your 20s, except for maybe in your 30s. But you're never more dramatic than when you're in your 20s. There's a point at which, and somewhere, between the ages of 25 and 29, it feels like everything is at stake.
Yeah.
And if certain things haven't happened, you feel the end is nigh. And
Right.
it's just a thing that happens in your 20s when you feel like you have to make your mark. And I was in a place where I I was convinced I had ruined everything. I had effed up, and and basically my doom was foretold. And I just called her because we were friends like that to talk, and I just went into this whole bag. And the best thing a friend can do is listen. She just listened to me rant, you know, and then she just said at the end of my rant, she said, "You're having a freak out. You're having a freak out. I have them twice a month. Just get a good night's sleep and you'll be fine." I've never forgotten that. Yeah.
That that's a beautiful. No, well, what's great is again, it's just a jazz. I hate to be cliche with that, but it's a quieter sounding album in parts, acoustic piano, and then here you come with this great distorted tone on some stuff. Did she say, "Hey, come in and
Yeah,
do
she was kind of like, yeah, she wanted me to play like that. She
right"?
said, don't want, So I was like a little self-conscious about it, but she was like,
Sure.
no, man, I want, do that. And
Well, that's I want to get to some of the stuff you're doing right now too, but talk to us a little bit about your concept of the parallel signals, because what's incredible is, um, you know, uh, uh, you look at that rig that you have, and there's guitar synthesis, there's old school, there's 13-pin stuff, there's modern,
Yeah,
you got
yeah.
pedals, amps, but you always have about three, four, five separate signals. Talk to us a little bit about that
So
and the
okay,
power
so
of that.
this box
Mm,
right here, um, this is made by Michael Ricci, Ricci, Michael Ricci, and he's in Etsy. He's at Etsy,
okay.
and he makes these passive resistance mixers. And it's a concept, originally these were made by DOD.
Oh,
Uh,
right. You used to
DOD
use
made these passive resistive mixes. I actually, the first time I saw one was in Boston
one.
in this shop. It's actually a small shop. And the proprietor had a bunch of keyboards, and he was basically running them all into, he had like a clavinet in front of the roads. And he was just running them into a just a Fender amp.
Right.
I said, "Oh wow!" And we started talking, and he said, "Well, yeah, man, this doesn't take any power. You don't need power." And then he said, "And the thing about it is that it's also a splitter. It's also a mult, right? So it not only mixes many, out to one.
Right.
It can take one out to many,
Perfect.
and that changed. Now, the original passive resistance mixer is one in, four out,
Right.
or four in, one out.
Right.
And Mike Ricci makes this one. He makes the four in, one out, but he also makes an eight in,
Bananas.
and eight in or eight out, right?
Yeah.
One to eight. And this allows me to send, one output goes to a Helix, one goes can go to an audio interface for a laptop, one can go into an iPad, one can go into you could have, as many, you know, as you want. And it's actually, he does a really good job of not so much crosstalk. And when he's really good. I this is like my maybe my fifth or sixth one of these, and I've owned a few of the four in, one out, one in, four out. Um,
Uh,
and it allows me to do these really extravagant and extravagant kind of multi-layered setups without everything being in series. It allows me to have like all small analog pedal chain go into Helix, a digital multi effects. It allows me to utilize any number of routings,
right.
if
And
you will. And I've had great success with them.
yeah.
And that's the whole parallel processing thing in a nutshell. And
Yeah.
it's very fun because you can create very interesting situations. And also, um, I've been using some of the Keith McMillan K mix,
Oh, great. Yeah. Great mixer.
which is a really great piece. I've used them for submixing, and I've used it also as an audio input, and it works very well.
Yeah.
It's
No.
yeah.
Kudos to his stuff. I want to see if there's some questions here on YouTube. I'll pull a few up, but also the tell us a little bit about right now. Like what's on the in the Logic or whatever DAW you use. What's happening right now?
Well, what's happening now? Okay, so what's happening right now? It's interesting you ask because there's a project that I'm kind of doing with the producer Mark Ronson.
Mm,
And we had done uh, a show for Apple TV talk, and he's doing a music show where he talks about different aspects of music. So like we're talking about distortion, and I have just gotten a track that I'm gonna play on, and I'm looking forward to that. I actually have there's a, a filmmaker that I've been working with over many years, Brad Lichtenstein, and I've done about 6 documentaries with him, and I'm about to go into meetings like tomorrow to talk about the next film project.
Great.
And I actually, my creative DAW that I use for a lot of my stuff is Ableton Live.
Yes. Great. Yeah. Hello, hello. Um, well, it
I can
looks
hear
like
you though.
there we go. There we go. We just had
Okay.
a little
You just had
hiccup.
a little hiccup.
Yeah, yeah. But
Yeah.
it was Apple because you said you're using a competing project.
Yeah, 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 right, right. I'm not talking about Logic, right?
But okay, Ableton. Can't go wrong. Love it.
Yeah, yeah. I love the program, and it's allowed me to do really unusual unusual things. One of the things, the unusual things I've done is I managed to make a socially distanced the Freeform Funky Freaks. That's myself, Calvin Weston, and Jamaluddin Takuma.
Sure.
We've been doing this project where we've numbered every time we played together.
Right.
And so
Yeah. Right.
and this is the third studio album, but we had to do them in individual spaces.
This time around. Yeah. Of course.
Yeah. And the thing about it is, it's kind of like no overdubs, it's one take. I'm really happy about it because I kind of was able to use the triple play system,
Oh
you
yeah.
know,
The
so I
Fishman.
was able to use software synthesizers, play through an amp, play, use my Helix, just a bunch of different things at the same time.
Right.
I got a chance to use my Freak box, you know, I use my SY 300.
Oh,
Um,
that's the Roland.
that's the boss. That's the boss.
Boss.
Audio in synth,
Yeah.
guitar synth, which I think is
Quarter inch.
pretty fantastic, actually.
It
Um,
really is. This yeah, absolutely. And people can, we have scholars here, so we can I thought rather than spend time showing everyone pictures of everything, this is beautiful because it's a more philosophical thing. But people can look these boxes up. But I love that that sense of having a number of signals at once. People don't realize how much power you have. Then it's like a big mixing board. You're
yeah,
sending.
right. You pull things in, pull things out.
Yeah,
Thing you can have things that act in real time, and you could have things that really don't necessarily track every note because everyone's obsessed with tracking,
right,
you know. But you can create kind of ambiances where you have like kind of note buildups,
right.
and they can exist at the same time as very pointed,
Sure,
direct notes,
sure.
and create kind of atmospheres, depending on how you utilize it. So yeah.
Yeah, no, that's beautiful. And what I didn't expect that's kind of coming in here is just a real a thing about the philosophy of these effects. Because for as long as I've listened to you play, you've used guitar synths, but
Yeah.
you go to their strengths. It seems you don't worry about what they can and can't do.
Yeah, because the thing about it is actually interesting. I was playing um Stain yesterday
Yeah,
and listening to Nothingness,
right,
which I did, and building that sound, and setting it up so that it actually tracked well, and the layering of my GR1
oh, that was a
that
one then. Okay,
yeah, the GR1, and combining that with Eventide, and layering that, and it just has a great, it's just a great sound. And I wanted to do something that was different than the heavy guitar
right,
thing,
yeah.
and it really worked incredibly well, so I'm really happy about that piece of music, how
And
that
those,
turned out.
yeah, and that those are Mesa Boogie years right then, right? Stain
That's, yeah. By that time, I was into the Mesa. Yeah,
yeah,
by that time, I was definitely into the Mesa Boogie years. The thing is, like, guitar synth had been a dream, even from early on. The Synthi Hi-Fly, which Pete Cozy used,
Right. 360 systems and
the 360 systems,
Avatar.
the avatars, and the
Did you
step,
have
the like, the step guitar, which people don't even talk about,
right,
right back in the, and those are incredibly rare,
right.
and
Yeah. That's let's jump to that for a second. We got just a few more minutes here, and thank you folks for being here for the gear spotlight
what
with
about some questions? Who got questions?
yeah. There's a lot of like hey, we love Vernon. We're happy he's here. Let me see. Any questions, y'all? This is people saying hello.
Hi.
Let me have you seen any of the portable folding bikes? Okay, so that's back to the bikes.
Oh, the folding bikes. I'm thinking about getting an e-bike for, but I don't
Oh,
know.
okay.
You gotta pick, I kind of feel like, I still want to pedal, I don't want a bike that's just purely a scooter, you know what I mean?
Yes,
So
just
thinking about it. I'm going back and forth,
uh,
it feels like cheating, but when you get past 60, it's like, ah.
people are obviously it's just enjoying it the way it is. They're talking about the instruments they had. A lot of people watching, but Decoding Society opening for GQ at the Harlem State Office Building.
Oh my God.
Right?
I remember that caused a commotion. GQ was great. GQ was a great band. And GQ, I mean, basically after GQ was Mint Condition. And that was in terms of live R&B bands. I mean, it just fell into the cult of the producer, and
Right.
that's what it became. And basically, the Roots are pretty much in terms of live bands. You know what I mean, with a guitar player and a bass player and the drums and stuff. I mean, the Roots are pretty much it. I mean, that we went from the Ohio Players, who
Yeah.
were players. We went from all of that. I mean, that's how you have, the NPG and Prince of the Revolution. I mean, there's a whole tradition
Right.
of
Yeah.
these bands, and it just all started to kind of become track dates. It all started to kind of really die down, which is really incredibly, incredibly sad. It's incredibly, because there was something to the band with the horn section, you
Yeah.
know, and those bands, a band like Brass Construction, they had a vibe to them. A band like Crown Heights Affair, and a lot of that was a victim of the kind of, there was a concerted um, attack against disco, against dance music, and then the technology came in to make it faster and cheaper to
Right.
do to do things. And of course, I love the DJ and what the DJ brought to the party, but at the same time, that idea of almost pre-planned music. I mean, really, the R&B band thing. The only place it exists now is in the church bands, and in the church chops and all that
Right.
ostentatious displays of faith, as I like to call it. But I mean, I came up on those bands, on
Yeah.
the just
No.
it's kind of, I think, one of the most beautiful things that happened with Van Halen, before Eddie's sad passing. Van Halen, they went on tour and they had Kool and the Gang
Cool
as
gang.
their opening band, and that was genius. That
Yeah.
was really, what a great American bill. I mean, I have so much love for the fact that happened.
Yeah. No. That's a
Yeah.
big.
So
That's a
yeah,
big.
but GQ, yeah, man. People were pissed. We would do, and because Shannon was just like, we're gonna do what we do. And I remember, like, I remember Zane was like really nervous because it was like, uh, it was a huge crowd and people were but even though we had some harmonic partisans in the house, on the street, so that was cool, but there were a lot of folks that were mad as hell.
It was
Oh
crap.
yeah, oh yeah.
No, a lot of people just having fun, and Henry Lohman is saying, "I got to interview Jamal Dean and Calvin." I know. Well, I've talked to Calvin. We're going to do one with G. Calvin, who just one of the greats. I want
Yeah.
to jump back on Ableton for a minute. Do you use the looper in there at all?
I actually, you know what? I have not used, I have not, I've actually used MIDI time code off of it going into my helix,
Right.
and I've done my loops inside of my helix, but tied to the MIDI time code of Ableton. That's how I've been doing my loops.
Yeah.
But people love it, and
It's
I'm want to explore it. It's a pretty cool method to
dope.
get
I
stuff
mean,
done.
well, that's what Adrian uses for years. That's why we have that laptop there. Pretty much, it, mi-
Right.
it mixes his ears and it's his looper, and of course you have, yeah, it's really
I
as you
could
know.
control. And it's so fun. It occurs to me that I could actually control the Ableton looper. Like I have Ableton going into my Helix, but I could conceivably actually really I could use the looper in Ableton and control it from my Helix, because it's a giant space brain that
Oh,
can
Felix,
control everything. That's the
oh,
thing about the Helix. The Helix floor
yeah,
is that it's not just a great multi effects, I mean, virtual amps and whatnot. It
yeah,
actually can control other things. That's what I was able to transition from the old VG99, which is also kind of a controller
hmm,
as well as a sound source. And they really thought of, the MIDI implementation is really excellent
yeah.
in the Line 6 Helix. So yeah, there are a lot of opportunities to work with Ableton, which now with 11 I'm going to avail myself of.
Yeah, well, I can't wait to hear what happens there. No, you're right. The Helix, which I have one sitting right here, it's also how they over design the ins and outs, right?
Yeah.
XLR, digital, four effect sends, and all that. Do you find you're using all of those in and outs?
Yeah, I generally use that so I can bring in other pedals.
Ah,
I can bring in the Eventide Rose,
okay,
or bring in the Strymon Night Sky,
yeah,
and the different crazy things, or the H9, which I also love, and they work well. They work well together. But it's also how I'm able to work, with, like, on this project. I worked with my Kemper, and had my basically had the Helix controlling the MIDI, because the Kemper is a great product,
yeah,
but it's not a controller. It produces fantastic sound, and they're always improving the effects, but it's not a way to control other things,
right, yeah,
you
yeah.
know. And
It,
I found that it's actually much more practical to use the Helix floor to control. What I really want to do, I have to sit down and do it. Is I want to turn my Helix into a virtual FC300, so that I can
oh,
have my VG99 as a module, as a separate module. Yeah, So that's the thing. So
that's the kind of show
we'll
this is.
talk. Yeah, so like how like I don't know if there's a way to do a handshake. Maybe we talk about you, mean, because you're also a mighty brain,
Well,
because that's what I would like to do, is to be able to have the Helix function that way.
yeah, no, no. Let's talk about that. And on that note, and yeah, because of course, besides playing.
It's just figuring out the control changes and applying them.
Yes, exactly. So, but I wanna, as we wrap up here, I wanna thank you in that circle too, because I'm a gear addict, and I'm into MIDI and all that stuff. In part from coming to see you play,
Yeah,
and
right.
large part,
I led you down the primrose path
dude, and you
to
were always,
damnation and destruction.
yeah, and always so fantastic from 1985, and friendly and answering questions, and here we are, and
Yeah,
so thank
yeah.
you. On that note too, one of my other heroes in your circle, which there's so many, everyone in the band, but Dennis Diamond, how's Dennis doing? Because great
Dennis is
techs in the
yeah,
world.
man. Dennis is a true scholar of the game. I mean,
Oh,
Dennis knows more about. I think that Dennis may have eidetic memory, and Dennis knows
what's that?
more about bands and sessions, and he is ridiculous. I mean, but literally from R&B, rock and roll, metal, his store of knowledge is vast. I mean, we had a whole discussion about the late great Jerome Smith, the guitarist from Casey and the Sunshine Band, right? Like everybody, if you want to really hear something, go and check out Jerome Smith on Get Down Tonight.
At the beginning there,
The beginning is playing on it is phenomenal, and it's pre whammy, and it's like Les Paul back in the day. You know what I mean? How he
eight,
very speed, like right. How he plays super high pitched. You know what I mean? And
yeah,
it's fantastic because you know, he plays his ass off, and
yeah, it's
yeah, yeah. So his knowledge of obscure players and all that, man, he's phenomenal. And actually talked to him fairly recently. Yeah,
well, please,
we're all on lockdown, so we.
yes, of course. Well, please give Dennis my love because a
Will
hero.
do. Will
Many
do.
times he's many times that he's explained to me what's going on in that path that you have on stage,
Oh yeah.
which it always adds up. It always makes sense. Um, on that note, Living Color. Are you talking to the guys
Oh
about
yeah. Well, we actually just
training
were.
files?
We're on. We this morning we were on. Skin from Skunk Anansi has
Oh,
a show, and we had a lovely chat with her talking about back in the day, and talked about the
okay.
anniversary of Stain and how that dovetails
Yeah,
with and the emergence of Skunk Anansi,
love
and
them.
yeah, yeah.
Okay, so we'll look for that. And are you guys tracking some things?
What? I actually started doing some co-writing with Corey,
Okay,
and we're gonna see what turns up. It's kind of like talking about um, the writing process, and we've been through such a tumultuous time period,
right.
and just kind of processing we're still going through it. What's happening right now is people are pretending as if it's over,
I know.
and so what's going to happen is that so we've had three waves of this pandemic. And because now in parts of the country, restaurants are opening and movie theaters are opening, and they're going to open amusement parks and all like that. And what's going to happen is we're going to have a fourth wave.
I don't see how not.
We're going to have a fourth wave. We're going to have a fourth wave with the vaccine trying to, like with vaccination attempting to to grab a hold of it before we get other variants. But I'll leave it at that. But
Yeah, no,
yeah,
that's.
yeah. I actually like almost a year on the 10th of March. I played with the great Otis Taylor, trance blues
Right.
at Iridium, and
That was that gig,
um,
right? You're saying.
yeah, that was that gig I was talking about.
No, we can use the word year now. Um, Last area to get into, because I mean, we could do this for 3 hours, folks.
Yeah.
This man has played so much music. He's doing so much music right now. I'm glad you brought up the scoring, because maybe spend a minute on that. What your different approaches. I mean, you've done stuff for W. Kamau Bell. You've done all these
Yeah.
films. You did the recent thing that you were just mentioning, and um, uh, tell us a little bit about how you approach that differently.
Well, I have it's kind of funny. A lot of it's like watching a movie, and playing the first, figuring out what the first theme is that works, and then submitting themes, and then figuring out, okay, is how is this theme gonna be reiterated? Like we did a film called When Claude Got Shot, and that's going to be premiering on the virtual South by Southwest, and
Okay.
we did that last year. I have a team of musicians I love working with, including V. Jeffrey Smith, you know, Leon Gruenbaum, who's been
Sem
a part
Chili.
of my music, Sam Chili and Tip Cheapy. Yeah, he's
That's
been a
great.
part of great Mark Peterson, phenomenal upright and electric bassist.
Right.
Um, Monica Rhodes, great string player. Maz Swift,
Oh yeah.
phenomenal violinist. So I have a group of musicians that I trust. That I love working with. Yeah,
That's great.
yeah. You have to make a lot more music than that. The crazy thing about that and placement of cues and things is like you could be you have to detach yourself. If you fall in love with a theme or a thing, you have to be prepared to let it go.
Right. Right.
You have to be prepared to be told that doesn't work, or it's too on the nose, or it's and it's a great challenge. I mean, Brad is he keeps hiring me much too much, and I love his work, and and I've gotten to work with the great Charlotte Lynch on, Free Angela Davis and All Political Prisoners. I got to work
Right.
with Thomas Allen Harris, Through a Lens Darkly. Um, yeah, so
Paid in Full was great.
Paid in Full, my man Charles Stone the Third. That's right.
Great. Great
Five
movie.
Fingers with Lawrence Fishburne.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
yeah,
No, I mean, folks, we're sorry we're out of time here, but we could do just 2 hours on the soundtrack. But this has been beautiful. I want to close with one last question tonight, which is talk a little bit about the setup you used, but also talk to us about working in Spectrum Road with what a lineup: Jack Bruce,
oh
Cindy
yeah.
Blackman, John Medeski, and you went with you know.
I was actually at that time. I was still that was still at that. I'm working with my. I think I was VG99 still
Mm,
at that point, and I actually had my Schumann PLL, which is a phase lock loop kind of audio synthesizer thing. I was using I was using I think the GR20 at
okay,
that point.
tell-
Boogie amps
okay.
for sure.
So a real
And actually, I was using a Kemper. Actually,
wow,
my lunchbox Kemper.
yeah.
Absolutely, I was using Kemper for some of that as well. Yeah, yeah, that was a unique setup. Yeah, definitely.
And just
And I think Space Station, which the Digitech Space Station.
oh, okay.
Um, at that point, I was using that.
What's that? Is that an echo unit or
It's like its own weird expression pedal multi effects, but you can
oh,
do kind of
right,
like kind of not just backwards effects, but you can do um kind of like you could almost have the effect of putting your hand on a tape reel and
right.
stopping all the audio.
Okay. I
Yeah.
yeah.
The
Is that what?
tensor, the Red Panda's tensor
Mm,
is a compact pedal that's able to do that as well.
yeah. Is that what you used on the beginning of? You did a cover on one of your solo
Oh
records.
yeah, I do the cover of Enjoy the Silence.
Yeah, and it
Yeah,
starts out, the
that
tape
kind
is
of
all
freakishness.
yeah. That's
Yeah, it's kind of almost like scratching, but almost like backwards.
sure.
That was my space station at the time. I actually traded. I actually have a super clean space station, which I'm really have like traded. I forget what I traded. I traded a pedal with a Twitter follower to get a super clean space station,
Okay.
and yeah,
Yeah.
I'm really happy. Um, they're kind of delicate. Sometimes they break down, but if you have a good one,
Right.
man, they're phenomenal. They're phenomenal. They're very versatile, and they allow you to make sounds like what the hell is that? And even though there are a lot of kind of what the hell is that pedals.
Oh, is that our signal? That's can you hear me? Vernon has
I have Frozen too, right?
there
Oh,
we go.
there we
Okay,
are.
there you go.
There we go.
Okay. So well, hey man, on that note, pedals
Yes.
where you go, what the hell was that? I think ladies and gentlemen, this is a man that has shown us what the hell is that so many times, so many beautiful times. My friend, thank you so much for your time.
No
We could
worries. Andre, you're the man. You're the man, and everybody knows it. You're the man, and everybody.
that's very kind, but we're gonna do this. We'll do this again because um, we're having some breakups here. Um, can you still hear me? Can you folks hear us out there? Um,
And we're frozen again. And we're back.
there we go. There we're back.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
but but we'll do this again, my friend. Good luck with the projects that are happening. I know you're gonna stay safe.
yeah, absolutely. Double
And
masking, if not triple.
people check out at Vernt22, VURNT 22. Find them on Insta, on Twitter. It's always fun. If
Yeah,
you're a
yeah, yeah.
sci-fi fan,
My latest thing was talking about Sydney Greenstreet and how we wouldn't have Jabba the Hutt if it wasn't for Sydney Greenstreet in Casablanca. But
no, the
uh, but
Casablanca,
I digress.
oh, the Casablanca thread today was brilliant. I'm telling you, folks, it's a laugh riot and educational as well. We're going to wrap up here. I'm André Cholmondeley. It's the Gear Spotlight. In 2 weeks from tonight, this show is every 2 weeks. 2 weeks from tonight, really special show. I've got Michelle Moog Kusa, whose dad was Bob Moog, of course.
Oh
And she's,
wow!
yeah, she's talk about weird music. Bob Moog helped make a lot of weird music,
I
and so
got a
we're gonna,
Moog guitar. I got a Moog guitar right here.
there we go. So we're gonna talk to her about growing up around some of that weird music, and also what she does today with the Moogseum. So that's in 2 weeks, right here, the 17th of March. On the 12th of March, my other show, Confronting Creativity, very special also, the rhythm section from Frank Zappa, early 70s, Tom Fowler and Chester Thompson. We're going to,
Wow.
yeah, next Friday, a week from this Friday. So, folks, thanks for tuning in. Please subscribe to Make Weird Music. Please go look up all of that Vernon Reid homework we gave you. Decoding Society, go look up his records, look up Mask, My Science Project,
Oh yeah.
Yohimbe Brothers. I mean, there's so much.
Yeah. Also, I want to say one thing. I am got a solo record that I'm going to be working. I'm working on too
Okay.
for mascot.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Well, we'll come back on and we'll talk about it in 6 months or something, uh, uh, and we'll promote that. All right. Thank you, man. We'll see you
Thank
soon.
you.
Thank
All
you.
right. All right, everybody. Be safe. Talk to y'all.